Hello and welcome to the Winners Never Quit podcast about mental resilience, learning from hardship, all to build a winner's mindset. Hosted by myself, Jack Jarvis, and if you could like, follow or subscribe to the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. Today I am joined by Matt Jarvis, former England international with over 400 professional caps for Gillingham, Wolves, West Ham, Norwich and Woking. Since retiring in 2021, he has moved into football punditry and he joins me now. Matt, welcome, mate. Thank you for coming on the pod, mate. Really appreciate it. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you for letting me come on the pod.
No, mate, anytime. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. So, let's get straight into it. We start every podcast the same, mate. How do you define winning in your life?
See, I would unfortunately probably have to break that down in a couple of sections. I think, first one would be family. I think winning, in life, I think I'm very lucky. I've got a wife and two healthy kids, fantastic family with me as well, like parents, brother, the whole circle, I suppose. And that, in my mind, is winning. I've got a roof over our heads, got a nice, a nice life, and that is winning. I think for me on that side of things, I think I really, it's something that's so important to me is family, being together and being able to enjoy that. And since retiring, I've been able to obviously been around a lot more, because that's one of the things. It's not a regret at all, but I missed a lot of my son. He's the older one. He's 6 now. I missed a bit of his for the first 2 years. I wasn't around as much as I would have liked. I know loads of other people in the same position in different walks of life, but I was then able to enjoy and spend so much time with my daughter and my son since retiring. So that's a massive bonus to me. The other side of things is obviously the football side and the competitive nature that I think everyone has, and that comes out in me in sport. I'm super competitive, and that's what drives you forward. It's been a luxury, I suppose, being able to play football and have a career in professional sport. But that, again, comes down to dedication, work hard. Don't think I was ever probably the most technically gifted player, but I was one that there's not many that would have probably worked harder and, before, after training, and would have dedicated my life to it. Just certain things that I find funny is, my wife always says when we first sort of met, I wouldn't be out later than 10:15. I was going home to bed because I was up training the next day. And it's the dedication, the stuff that you sacrifice. Yeah, you sacrifice for yourself. Really, it's not for anyone else. It's for yourself. And I dedicated my life to playing football, and I have no regrets on that. It's you can say it's a job. It is the best hobby in the world to be able to do that, and define winning, and that is, I can look back at goals and achievements that I set myself, I suppose. And we're sat in here in my gym, and there's a few shirts up on the wall, and I've got my England one up, and that for me is winning. Being able to represent my country on the big stage is an absolute dream come true, and defining winning is just being able to look back and be proud of what you've done and achieved in your industry. And for me, is football, and I can sit here and not satisfied because you never want to retire, but I can look back now and be comfortable in the sense that I can see my shirts, I can see my career and go, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I did well.
No, you did really well. I think that's a bit of an understatement. So before we talk about internationals and playing in the Prem, let's roll it all the way back. You started out in Millwall, but you got released. And how did you move to Gillingham? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, statistic-wise, I was 16 trying to get a youth team contract at Millwall, and I got released, told not good enough. And as a 16-year-old kid, still at school, it was extremely difficult. I can remember it. Me and my dad went in, and there was all of the coaches there. It was for like, it was basically like yes, no. It was that sort of, I suppose.
Like Britain's Got Talent,
something
almost.
like that. Yeah. And then I come out, and there was a Gillingham scout pretty much round the corner as soon as I come out, going, look, we've got a game tomorrow. Would love you to come and play, and get yourself straight back into it. And I said no. I just found it all too much. I was like, I just couldn't face it.
Couldn't face the rejection again?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was more that I just found it very difficult to be told as a 16-year-old you're not good enough. I found myself driving home. Obviously, my mum and dad drove me home, and I remember just sitting in the car thinking, I don't know whether I'll just maybe just go and play locally with my mates, just for enjoyment and doing that. But I was, I was very lucky in the sense that the Gillingham scout Bernie Dillon kept on calling me and was like, Carl, come training. And after about 2 weeks, I ended up going training. And to be honest, I wasn't great in training. I must have showed glimpses of bits and pieces, but I was nowhere near my best. Confidence-wise, it took a massive hit, and I found it difficult. But I got offered the youth team contract, and for me, it was just like a light bulb moment in me. I went into training. I went into digs, so I lived away from home. So moved out at 16. Lived in digs with 2 other teammates at the time, and then you sort of grow up really quickly. And I think that whole situation was just sort of what I needed. You could, we say about dedicating your life. Because none of us could drive. We were in digs. We got picked up by the youth team manager and dropped home by the youth team manager. So we were in early and we left super late. So what did we do? We didn't just mess around. We were playing football. We were doing 1 touch, 2 touch. We were playing, so we were practicing and bettering ourselves, I suppose. And that was like a light bulb moment for me, to confidence-wise as well. I just hit the ground running. Youth team was really enjoyable, first and foremost, but I did really well in my first year. I started actually playing a lot of the games up front because I was quick. It was one of them, you just kick the ball over the top and run on and score.
Chase after it,
Yeah, so that was a good starting point for me, but it wasn't until the second year I went on pre-season tour with the first team, which was amazing.
Where was that?
It was Latuke. I think they still go there now.
Yeah.
But it was great for me. We had some really experienced first team as well, so there's a lot of great guys that really helped me in the sense that you realise the dedication that it needs to play in the first team. Also the importance. People were, if they didn't win the game, you didn't get that win bonus, or your mortgage. You needed to pay your mortgage. This was is a massive wake up call to be like, actually, this is more than just a hobby now. It's people's livelihoods and that scenario. Which, again, as I say, you grow up pretty quick when it comes to things like that, and they helped me tremendously to in training, if I was, I'd sprint past someone and they would be like, don't ever do that to me again. And you sort of like, okay, yeah. But you get belief in yourself, but also you get respect of the other players, and that's how it naturally grows. And I sort of stayed in the first team after that pre-season, and as I say, I don't think I ever sort of looked back. I always mention that I got released at 16 at Millwall, because statistically so many people do, and you can go 2 ways. My brother got released at the same age from Millwall, and unfortunately he had injuries and didn't sort of carry on, and he went in another direction. But for me, I was fortunate that I got given that other chance, and I went and took it with both hands.
Yeah, no, certainly. Do you think it was better the way you did it, like on the job training? And what league were Gillingham in at the time?
They were in the championship at the time, yeah.
Rather than potentially maybe, I don't know, being at like a Man United academy.
It's really difficult, because I look at it now and I'm so proud the way that I've done it, because you start sort of at the bottom and you work your way up. Gillingham were in the championship, but we got relegated, so we were in League One. So I worked my way from League One, Championship, Premier League, International. So it was an incredible journey. But you look round and you think, I'm so proud the way I did it. I don't want to redo it all again and see what the other way. But then, I've got my son now who's loves football and wants to do it, and you start sort of looking and you think, well, actually, if you go to one of the big boys and you start there and you don't quite make it there, you drop down a little bit. You don't drop from top to bottom. You drop a little bit and then you get another opportunity. Then you can drop down again. Whereas if you don't make it at the bottom, you're out.
Yeah.
So there's a fine balance. You know, I wouldn't ever change anything the way I did it. I loved it. The clubs I play for were fantastic, and the fans and everything about it. But for me personally, it's just that hunger to keep striving to get to the next level, and just keep working.
Yeah. When you got relegated, did you have a good season that year?
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah.
And how would you balance that, you know, in the team? You're looking around like, come on, lads, pull your weight here a bit. Or, do you know what I mean? I always wonder that dynamic.
It wasn't that at all for me. I was quite early on playing in the first team. So, you know, I was doing well, but it was such a strange journey home because I was like buzzing to be in the first team, you know, and playing in the championship. I mean, what kid wasn't? But you had that mixture of age groups, players that were sort of maybe towards the end. Some are in their prime, some are maybe younger, but that bus journey home was horrendous.
Who did you play on the last?
We were Nottingham Forest away, and we had to win, and we drew, and got relegated. And yeah, everyone on the way home was just like either on their phones talking to agents trying to get out, or just quiet. And you knew that was just going to be a huge moment because that change room was going to be split, and it was basically start again. And as I mentioned, a lot of them players really helped me, and great people, and that was it. There's no sort of like, that was it, bus journey, everyone sort of got off and that was it. You don't really see anyone again. You start with a whole new squad in pre-season.
Do you think the getting released from Millwall helped you deal with that situation? Because you'd already sort of tasted that I hate to use the word failure, but failure at Millwall, and then, you know, you got relegated, but you're like...
No, to be honest, this is where I suppose I have to give... You know, my parents, who they were sports people when I wasn't growing up then. Before I was born, they both, funny enough, they played table tennis for England.
Oh yeah.
They were both England number ones. My mum won the European mixed doubles and things like that. But I genuinely feel like the advice because they'd been and done it. I think my dad drilled it into me very early on about, doesn't matter about anyone else. If you keep doing what you do and you work and you work and you work, it will pay off in the end. So for me, it wasn't like, I was obviously gutted that we got relegated because you want to play at the highest level.
Yeah.
But for me, I used it as a positive. It was right now I'm going to play week in, week out. I'm going to be able to show everyone what I can do. And, you know, if you're dropping down at a league, maybe you can show your talent a little bit more. And it was always that one that, you know, you have to go and do it. And that's, you know, as a young kid, I think I'm 18. You know, that it is pressure, but I've always been my biggest critic. And you know whether you've played well or you haven't, and you don't need anyone else to tell you. And that's the hardest bit about, you know, having that pressure as a young kid. But at that age, you are fearless. You just go out and do it. Especially in my position, I was a winger. I was always wanting the ball, taking players on. That I suppose raw from the crowd, or that when you get the ball, that anticipation, everyone off their seat, that what drives you forward to do it more and more.
That big sucking of air, like, everyone's like,
yeah.
So when you drop down to League One, you have a good season that season at Gillingham, don't you? And is that when you moved to Wolves after that? That first season in League One?
I was in the team of the year.
So you did have a very good season.
Yeah, so it was really good. And, you know, we talk about, you know, I had a hernia, and at the time the manager wouldn't, because I was playing well. The manager wouldn't let me have the operation, and one of the games, my last game, I think he cancelled my op about 3 times. But my last game was against Sunderland away, and I played about 70 minutes because I couldn't run around anymore. And it was against Mick McCarthy, and it was against his team, and I'd done really well. And obviously in the summer when I was looking to move, really, my contract was up. Obviously I was on I wasn't on a Bosman. You had to have compensation because I was under the age of 24. He always remembers that game, and it's like, if I had had that operation before, would I have played in that game? And you look at everything, just sort of goes into, you know, it's just one of them things. Everything happens for a reason, and that game specifically, obviously got me a move to Wolves, and that moment I actually went and met Mick in Portugal in the summer to have a conversation, and him to tell me about Wolves and why he wants me there, and for me to ask any questions. And ever since I met him, that was it. I was always going to go to Wolves, and he's probably the best manager I've worked with. He was brilliant for me. He's super. Like, the biggest compliment I can give him is he's honest. Tell you whether you've done well, if you haven't done well, what he wants from you. That whole package. And as players, we are. It's quite simple. You just want to be told the truth, and that's very difficult in a lot of industries, but specifically in football.
What did he teach you? You said he was the best manager you've worked under. What did he teach you about leadership and all that sort of important sort of man management stuff?
I think straight away off the back, when I first signed at Wolves, I actually got injured in pre-season, and I was out for the first sort of 2 months. I think I missed the first 2 months, or just under 2 months of the season. And for me, going from sort of a bit of an unknown, going into Wolves, who were in the Championship, he was building a team full of, it was a little bit of a mixture of older players, but full of youngsters that hadn't really sort of done it at that stage yet. So I was gutted that I missed most of pre-season and then the first sort of month and a half of the season. And he was straight away, would come in and put his arm around me and was like, look, I completely understand. You want to show everyone what you can do. It's your new club, everything like that. He said, when I signed at Celtic, he missed the first sort of 3-4 months of the season, couldn't do it. So he was like, look, I completely understand your position. Don't rush, get it right, work yourself back. And then when you're ready, then you can show everyone what you're about. And it just, them little things, when you just joined the club, I think I was 19, 20 years old, desperate to do well. And you have that bit of, not relaxation, but a bit of that, that pressure's just been taken off a little bit because the manager's come out, he's backed me, he really wants me to do well, understands my situation, sees that I'm absolutely desperate to play. And it just gave me even more confidence to when I did get back fit, I just was flying and ready to do well for him as well as having an amazing group of players that, as I said, there was a few older players that had been there and done it that helped the youngsters, and there was a lot of us youngsters that hadn't played at that level or just played at that level, hadn't played in the Premier League, so that hunger and desire to do that was paramount.
Yeah, what was it that first season that you got with Wolves that they got promoted?
Second. We missed out on the playoffs by 1 goal. Which was hard to take. But I genuinely think that I know it sounds cliche, but that made us so much more determined and mentally ready to do it the following season. I think that first season we might not have been ready in a weird sense, but the following year you just knew from pre-season that we were going to have a good season. Yeah,
what was that run like? What was in that whole sort of season? Can you summarise it?
It's just like riding a wave.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience because we were all similar age. We're bar 1 or 2 older pros that have been and done it. But so as a squad, we were all going out together with girlfriends, wives.
Yeah.
Everyone was out together after games or going out with paintballing or golf or whatever it was. It was riding that wave of consistently winning each game. If we went 1-0 down, we knew we were going to score. We were going to come back, and it's that confidence that breeds in a team, and you know that you had players. Doesn't matter who was playing, everyone wanted that team to do well, and it's a strange scenario to be in. I think that not playing at the highest level and that hunger really came out in that team, that everyone was desperate to do well, and ultimately I think that got us through.
Yeah, and you move up to the Prem. What was the biggest difference that you noticed from the Championship to the Premier League?
To make it simple, I think the biggest difference is in the Championship you get less time on the ball, but it's easier to do something with. If I'm talking from a wide player's perspective, you get less time because it's so quick. Everyone's rushing around, ratting you, getting close, trying to tackle you. But
it's such a physical league in the Championship as well.
Definitely. But when you get turned and you get an opportunity to take someone, it's not easier as such, but they're not as quick, they're not as sharp, they're not maybe as good defensively or something. And you can do, if there's a pass on, you can see it, you can chop, you can go down the line, you can cut inside. There's just slightly easier to do something with. Whereas the Premier League, you get more time on the ball. You get that little bit more respect. You get a touch, you can maybe get turned, but then you go to shoot, they've come out and blocked you. You go to cross the ball, they've blocked it. You fake to cross and you go down the line. They've got pace, they've got the arm across. It's just harder to do something with. So I think is the biggest difference from the Championship to the Premier League, and you get punished in the Premier League. You had 10 shots in the Championship against you, and they scored 1 goal, whereas you get 2 shots in the Premier, you're 2-0 down.
Did you take a few? Well, did you take any bad batterings in that first season? Like sort of learning.
Yeah, I think we had a few.
I was just only that facial expression when you said punished. I was like, oh, is there a game he's thinking of there?
Do you know what? I think the biggest we had a wake up call very early on. I think we played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and I remember I think we lost 3 or 4-0. But it wasn't just the scoreline. It was, I remember, in midfield just trying to press people, and there was I think it was one Matter, William, I think.
Because Matt would have been
Ashley Cole
prime then as well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
and just trying to press them, and you're thinking, I've got this, and they just bank round the corner, 1-2, so sharp, and you're just like, wow, this is the Premier League, this is the big league. It was a wake up. It was like, wow, this is the Premier League, but you've got to snap out of it. And you've got to go straight into the next game because they come thick and fast, and each game is vital to staying in the Premier League.
Did you go up as champions?
Yeah.
So, because I always think newly promoted clubs, like you look at Derby, for instance, no one wants to be Derby. Going up through the playoffs and then having the worst points total in the Premier League. Do you think about that as a player, or are you just excited to play in the Prem?
No, you're excited. If there's
saying that when it comes to Christmas, mate, you're at the bottom, you're like, we've only won 1 game.
Look, no one likes losing, but to play in the best league in the world, there's nothing like it. So whatever way you get promoted as championships, runners up, or via the playoffs, no one really cares as long as you're playing in the Premier League. It's nice to. I didn't do the playoffs. You said we got promoted as championship, but everyone I spoke to when I joined West Ham after they got promoted through the playoffs, and it's that momentum building, and as long as you win the playoffs, it's a great way to get promoted. But I look at it the other side. I was like, well, we got promoted as champions, we won the league, and you get all of the summer. You've got promoted, you're buzzing. You don't have to. You have that mental block of that playoffs it's so emotional, highs and lows to go through it. We'd been and done it, and you can enjoy your summer and be ready for pre-season to go.
It's so true though, momentum, and if you win, Villa went on that run. I think it was when Jack Grealish got punched in the head by the fan. Then they went on that run. They ended up winning it. They're going up. I always think though, I don't know what's worse. Maybe what happened to you missing out on the playoffs by 1 goal, or when teams have been in the mix for top and then end up coming third. It's tough, isn't it?
Very tough. But like I said, momentum is key. If you can obviously win the playoffs and get promoted, and you're still buzzing and everything just ticks over and you're ready to go for the Premier League. But it's a total different challenge, and that's where as we said, that going up as champions, you have to recruit well. You have to be ready for the Premier League because it's totally different to the Championship, and it's you're desperate for points each game because you know how important they are.
What do you make of Nottingham Forest? Obviously, they spent, I think, what was it, 150 mil this year?
Something like that.
Yeah,
I think they've got 23 new players or something like that. It's so difficult. Like, I completely understand their situation. They had a lot of loan players last year that helped them get promoted. It's they didn't have that. They had a lot of players then out of contract, and you need a squad. But having 23 players come in and still trying to work out, they all came in dribs and drabs as well. It wasn't all right. Start pre-season, here you go. There's 20. There's your 25-man squad. It was one signing come 2, 3, 4, and they come and they still, the season started. They still haven't finished their transfer, so it's very difficult. I think they were still working out who's their best starting 11. You're trying to get partnerships between like the centre halves or the left back and the left winger, and the 2 centre mids. You've got to have complement each other, and that takes time. So it's very difficult to just go, here's a whole new squad, and there you go, starting 11, you all play and all do well. It does take time, but for them, time is not on their side.
There's no silver bullet, I think, because Steve Sidwell, he always talks about when he went up with Reading, and they kept that nucleus together. They only brought in a couple of players, and they did really well, top half of the table. But you look at other teams, don't get any new quality in. We speak about Derby, and then they're, bottom of the league. So it's probably why we're not managers, mate.
Do you know what? It's really difficult because I do agree with City, because we did that at Wolves, and we added a couple of new players, but it was the majority of the players that got promoted that played. But you do need that extra bit of quality. You need them players that come in, because it's then competition from places. You need to improve as a player. Otherwise you're playing week in, week out. It doesn't matter what the score performance is, and you can't have that. You need to be bringing in quality players to raise everyone in training, to raise performances in games, and keep that commitment and that quality level so high, because otherwise you get in a bit of a downward spiral.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So how did the move to West Ham come about, and what year was that?
So it was just after. So it's I played for England at the end, or I think it was the March time in
2011.
2011, yeah. Which was the end of that season. Was when Wolves got relegated. We got relegated, and I think Mick McCarthy got sacked, and there was like 13 games left when Terry Connor took over, and I think I got about 7 goals in the last 13 games, and I had a really strong, I had a good season personally myself, and I was played for England. I was desperate to get back in the England squad. I obviously thought that my performances, I was wanting to carry on playing in the Premier League, and I got the opportunity to go to West Ham. They got promoted via the playoffs. They put in quite a number of bids for me that got rejected. But then, I started the pre-season. I did the whole of pre-season. I played first few games for Wolves in the Championship, and then, eventually the clubs agreed a fee, and I moved to West Ham, and it was all so quick, really. I think it was all agreed on the Wednesday night. So I drove down the Thursday, I signed on the Thursday, I trained on the Friday, and played on the Saturday away at Swansea. It's like that quick. But yeah, I was club record signing at the time, so it came with.
It was about 10 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was rising to like 12.75 or something like that, to be precise.
Yeah. Come on, Jack, get that in there.
But that comes with a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
We talk about the mental health side of things. That. You sign at a new club, you come with that, with the pressure of being the record sign, the pressure of wanting, everyone wants you or expects you to transform the team, or to score 20 goals or do something like that. So for me, it was, I knew I was desperate to do well anyway. I was desperate to do well for West Ham. I was desperate to get back in the England squad. Obviously for my teammates as well, and it was a really good squad of players. Again, mixture of players that had either been there a while or played in the Premier League for most of their careers, and it was a really talented squad. And they all made me feel extremely welcome, and got me into that team and that mentality, which was brilliant. But that side of things, if you don't have your best game, you know about it, and what a waste of money and all of that, it comes out.
Yeah.
But for me, I've always, as I said to you earlier, I was always my biggest critic. I didn't need anyone to tell me whether I played well or I didn't. So I think my last season in Wolves and my first season at West Ham, I put the most crosses in Europe, and the most accurate crosses in Europe as well. So it wasn't just hitting the ball in for no apparent reason. It was to players, and I started my career at West Ham very well.
Yeah, that was like me. I was telling you about my Sunday League career, glittering. That was me hitting balls in, going nowhere near any players. I just want to take you back through your England call-up. How was that? And was that a moment in your career where you thought, wow, I've done it?
There's a moment, yes. I'll bring you to that point. But to start with, it was just we played away against Aston Villa in the early kickoff, and we won 1-0 when I scored, and which was huge for us as Wolves, but also for me personally, because the next day I got a text message and was like, from the FA, you've been called up to the English squad, and I was like, not a chance. Someone's on the wind.
This is my brother. Exactly. Good one, mate. April Fool's, nice.
Exactly. And then I get a call about a minute later just to say, no, it's not a wind up. This is, you have been called up, and it was just, absolutely amazing. That feeling to just even be, I knew I was in the preliminary squad a couple of times, but to actually make the squad was just incredible. To then go and meet, it was Fabio Capello, who was the England manager at the time as well, and to be called up by anyone would be amazing. But as a manager that with his career and his accolades, everything that he's done, so it was great. And I remember my first meeting, I just got to the Grove at the time. Just come out the car, just first went into reception, he's there and shakes my hand, and then he just goes, are you pleased to be here? And I was like, obviously, this is absolutely amazing. He was like, that goal against Aston Villa, that's what got you in.
Really?
And I was like, wow. He was
like,
it
a good goal?
It was a good goal, actually. Yeah, it was a nice volley. But, just the importance, he was like, you were close, but that goal got you in. And I was like, wow. And then when everyone asked me, like, what's your best goal? I always say, well, that one was just my most important best goal, just because it got me in the England squad. And then that whole experience being in England was just amazing. It was the first sort of couple of hours was like being back at school the first day where I didn't know anyone. I played against all of them, but I didn't know them personally. Obviously, a lot of them, pretty much all of them had either been in the England squad before or were teammates all in top 6 clubs. I was fighting relegation with Wolves, so it was just incredible. And as I said, they were all brilliant to me. And the game that I played, it was against Ghana, and it was at Wembley. It was 80-odd thousand fans. All my friends and family were there.
Would it have been pretty new then, Wembley, wasn't it? I would have thought.
Yeah, ish.
Relatively, yeah.
Just
I might have got that really wrong, mate. Someone's going to have my eyes on the comments. No, it was built in 2006, mate.
But just that whole experience, the Ghana fans were incredible as well. Just playing, I could have played anywhere in the world, but to be at Wembley in front of all my family were there, all my mates. There's so many people that I bump into that were either like Gillingham fans or Wolves fans or West Ham fans, like they were like, I was at that game, and you're just like, it was just incredible. And you say about moments, I remember I was warming up. I basically warmed up the whole game because I was just so excited and just desperate to get on. And then the second half started and I was out running up and down on touchline, just looking back the whole time, just waiting for someone to sort of get the shout or the
give
wave.
You the nod.
And someone come down and waved it, and I was like, me? And they were like, and I was just sprinted back. I was like, shirt was off, putting it with pads, everything was ready. I was ready to go. And then that moment that, the board went up, Jack Wilshere came off, and I sort of, shook it out, walked onto the pitch, and I was like, I've done it. I've played for my country. Like, no one can take this away from me. This is the pinnacle. I've done it. And then, I know it's cliche, but then you're into the game and you just want to get a touch. I got a couple of early touches, and then you sort of relax into it. Yeah, and then you're just playing football. I know it sounds so silly, but that's what it's like. That moment, just that 2 seconds, I was like, I've done it. And then bang, gone. And then after the game, you can then enjoy the whole experience. So, I've got the shirt there. It's up there.
Yeah,
one signed
behind us in the gym. Yeah.
And to be fair, the kit man was a Wolves fan, and he got me Asmo Jean's shirt, who scored in the game. So it's just amazing experience. And that moment is just something that I'll always remember. And it can never be taken away.
Mate, more than so many players, like all my mates, none of us have played for England, and it's good that you say, no one can take that away from you, because not regret, but do you wonder why you maybe didn't get more caps for England?
Well, look, I would have desperately played.
Yeah.
Love to have had more caps, but at that particular time, I look at the talent that was the wide players. You had at the time, you had Stuart Downing, Ashley Young, Theo Walcott, Aaron Lennon, James Milner. All of these players that were playing at the highest level. They were Champions League players. They were fighting out for Premier
Milner's
League
still
titles.
playing now, mate.
I know. But you look at it and you think, well, actually, incredible to get in front of them and playing in these games anyway, or playing that game anyway. So Yeah, obviously desperate to try and get back, and that was my whole intention was, went to West Ham, played well at West Ham, but just didn't get the opportunity again. But as we say, I've got my flat cap with my name and everything in, so cherish it.
No, I talk about it all the time. Like wins like that, no one can ever take away from that. It's a credible achievement. You shouldn't. But who am I to gob off? I've had no Premier League caps, no any caps.
Yeah. It's funny you say you should celebrate each win, but it's very hard to celebrate.
Being a competitive guy, I know, I get it.
You're always strive for the next. You win a game on a Saturday, you got a game on a Tuesday, that game's gone. You're focused on the Tuesday. I know people would be like, oh, that's so cliche, everyone says that, but it's not.
Yeah.
It is exactly what it was like. I say, for instance, we played on a Saturday, we had a Tuesday game, and I was just going out for dinner, for instance, with my wife or with some friends. I would cancel that dinner straight away because I would be getting, if people were out seeing him and you'd be like, what's he doing out? What they just lost, and I'll be like, I don't need that. I need to concentrate. I've got to be ready again for Tuesday, and I look back now and I think maybe I shouldn't have. I should have been able to maybe go out and enjoy myself a little bit more. But I was like, actually, no. I was fully dedicated to making sure that I gave it absolutely everything. I can literally go. I've got no regrets about any of my career. I couldn't have done any more. I couldn't have worked any harder. Obviously, it would have been nice to have scored or done this and done that, but I could not say that I could change anything because I gave it absolutely everything, and that's winning for me. That is, I've got no qualms saying that. Everything happens for a reason. I fully believe that. I wish, maybe I wish that I didn't go into a block tackle with Yaya Toure and then done my knee. But these things happen for a reason, and we'll go on to that, I'm sure, about injuries and that side of things. But I absolutely loved my career. I wouldn't have changed anything, and it's been the best thing I could have possibly wished for as a kid.
That's actually one of my questions I had later, mate. Have you got any regrets? But you've answered it now, so
well,
sweet.
There we go.
So your time at West Ham, who was manager at the time?
Sam Allardyce.
Big Sam. How was it working under him? Because he gets a bad rep.
Do you know what?
And I don't think he deserves it personally.
It's so interesting with him. I think he's such an old school manager, but he was like the first to be any sort of the new technology and the statistics and set pieces and like GPS and getting sports psychologists and all of this type of thing in clubs. And he was, I remember like the first, so when I signed it was just so it was they played the first couple of games, I think, so I came in. And then he broke the season down, which I thought was brilliant. He broke the season down into 8 sort of games, give or take. Some were 6, whatever. But so the first 8 games, he was like, right, to finish 10th, that was our aim in the first season. Bearing in mind, just been promoted for other playoffs. First season, finished 10th in the Premier League. You need this many points, which is this many wins, this many draws, this many losses. That's this many goals scored, this many conceded. That's everything was broken down to the smallest little bit. And like the first 8 games, right, we want 10 points. We had, maybe we had Man U, Arsenal, Chelsea in the first 10 games or something like that. And you'd be like, right, we want 10 points. After the 8 games, you had a review. We got 14. You're like, fantastic. That 8 games done. Next, we want 8 points from this thing, and you got 6. And you're like, okay, no problem. 2 we've made up from the last week. Say you were going on a bad run and you were lost 4 in a row or 3 in a row. Maybe 2 of them were in the block before, which is then wiped. So mentally you're like, we've only lost 2. And it just made things so much clearer, and the understanding of what was required from you. He was very much. Everything was done, like set pieces, anywhere on the pitch was like it was rehearsed. It was so everyone knew where they were supposed to be and where the ball was going and what was needed from each player and your formation and everything. So on that side of things, he was very much old school drilled, but he had so much all of the new technology and how much running statistics in games and how many goals, how many crosses, how many shots, how many high intensity sprints you've done, and everything was. So it was very much a massive compromise of both sort of characters. But yeah, like for me, he wanted me to get wide, put crosses in the box, and ultimately that was my role in the team. Yeah,
because Andy Carroll moved there, did he, when you was there?
I remember when I first signed.
So straight away I'm thinking, right, most crosses in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, were you?
Do you know what? Andy had the most successful headers from crosses as well.
Yeah.
So it was like, what a dream team this could be. Unfortunately, we didn't play as many games together as we would have liked. But I remember when I first signed, he's like, "Is it done?" And I was like, "Yeah, all signed." He's like, "Brilliant." He said, "Like, I've got something that's going to come that's going to help you." And I was like, "Oh, right, what's that?" He was like, "You'll see." And then next day, I think pretty much he signed Andy Carroll on loan. You're thinking, "Wow, this is going to be
There's a winger, mate, buzzing.
Yeah. He was brilliant to play with. All he wanted to do was just get the ball and just hang it up. All of you could see him. He's just like that with his hands, just like, just hang it up. He doesn't want any of these whipped balls in. He just wanted you to put it up in the air and for him to just come and, it was like a battering ram, just to clean out everyone, including the goalkeeper, and just the way that the timing of the header. There's not many people that can do that. It's like a slap head, just bang. It was unbelievable. So yeah, whenever you can still see him now watching, I messaged him every day. You just see him like just hang it up, hang it up. Doesn't want any other these whipped crosses in or anything. Just hang it up so he can come and destroy everyone.
What was he like as a player and a person? Because I do think, as I got a little bit older, I am a Liverpool fan, so he never did it. He didn't do it for us. But like, what is he like? Because I think he gets a rough time of it sometimes. People say, he's injury prone, he's not committed. But what was your experience with him?
Absolute top guy, both on the pitch and off the pitch. I think.
Well, the Geordies are good crack, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't praise him enough for what he was like as a character. I think his attitude to everything, to life and to football and to away from football was he had that mindset. He didn't care what anyone else thought, and I think that's amazing. I wish I had a bit more of that. I think he stands out. He's 6 foot whatever, big long hair. He's massive. He's huge, and he didn't necessarily care what everyone else was thinking or doing, and he would just go out and do his thing. And as a player, he was brilliant. He would absolutely go nuts at you for doing anything, but you knew what you were going to get with him. So strong, held the ball up, great with his feet. I think he's underrated with his feet, but he was fully committed in a game. He wasn't necessarily the best trainer, but he could just turn it on in games and was just outstanding. Obviously, he was fully committed, so that's why I think unfortunately injury-wise he suffered. But a real top guy.
Yeah. How did you get on that season that he got there?
We finished 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Really well.
We did finish 10th. Yeah. It was, what a season to have first back in the Premier League. As I say about the players that were there, they played at that level. They know the importance. They knew how to work the ball as a team. I think Sam Allardyce drilled us in set pieces and where you were supposed to be in your role on that pitch. So I think we were a very, very strong team, and because of the bond in the change room, I think that I always bring it up whenever I speak about who if you were in the trenches, who would you want alongside you? And there's you could name loads of players in that squad that would anything would happen. Like Ginge, for instance, James Collins would just dive at the ball with his head, just to stop the ball going in the goal, and that was the commitment levels of that squad.
Who was on the squad at the time when you were there?
Jussi Jääskeläinen was in goal. You had James Collins, Winston Reid, Jerry O'Brien, George McCartney. You had Nobes, Jack Collison, James Tompkins. Working my way through the team.
Some big characters then.
Fantastic. But that's the whole. Kevin Nolan as well was instrumental. He was the captain at the time. Was instrumental.
What was he like as a captain?
I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of really good captains in the sense that they obviously were very good on the pitch, but off the pitch they would make it their problem. If anyone in the squad needed anything or was suffering or had a question or anything, he would take it on board and would go and have rows with the manager or do something to if it was to help the team or help one of the lads. He was brilliant at it, and I think that's everyone says about Nobes now, and he's taken that leadership on from learning from someone like Nobes, Kevin Nolan, and now he's done the same for himself, and he's grown and added bits to it now, which now Declan Rice has taken on, and that's what it's about. And captains are, yes, they need to be playing and doing well. But what they do is galvanise the squad. They keep the change room run, and I mean that with regards to keeping order in the change room. There's any arguments or anything, it's just sorted out between the group, and obviously at that point in time that we were a very strong squad of players, and in pre-season, when any new players come in, they come in and they are part of the squad. And I think that's why you look at a lot of the players that came in that came in and sort of got into the squad and were brought into the team and the family. And I think that's why captains are very important.
That last season you did at Wolves, and then your first season, you record signing. How did you deal with that pressure? Because West Ham, the lad that lives off of me from East London, big West Ham fan. When I told him about this today, he was like, "Oh yeah, how do you deal with that pressure from such a loyal, passionate fan base?"
Yeah, it's difficult, I have to say. The thing that I try and break it down into the smallest bits is that I gave it everything, every single game, whether I played well, whether I didn't. I know that I worked my socks off. I gave everything to the shirt, and I can't. Maybe I wasn't great in some games, maybe I was very good in others, but I worked hard and I made sure that I came off the pitch and thought, I couldn't have done any more in that side of things. I think having good people around you, teammates, family. My mum and dad travelled absolutely everywhere, all around the country, watched pretty much every single game I played in, from 17 to, well, obviously younger than that, but from professionally from 17 to I finished at 35. Having a family like that is so important, because win, lose or draw, they're there with you. My wife, she's been through everything with me, which is a lot, and I'm extremely close with my brother, and that's a really special bond that I think you can get slapped back down to reality if you're trying to go a little bit too above your station, and obviously picks you up if you're a bit low, and that's ultimately the hardest thing in football, is to stay level. Because you have a massive high if you win, you have a massive low if you lose, and you've got to try and sort of stay steady in that one bit of position, and emotionally you sort of try and cut it all out, and it's very difficult. But at the end of the day, you try and break it down. Go, you're playing football, you're doing the best job, in brackets, in the world, and you've just got to go and enjoy every single moment.
How many seasons did you do at West Ham in total?
I think it was 4.5 or 5.
4 or 5, yeah. And then you moved to Norwich. How did the last sort of stage of your West Ham career, and then how did it all come about moving to Norwich?
So what happened was my last sort of season at West Ham, Sam Allardyce sort of changed the formation and played with like sort of a diamond in the midfield rather than playing with any wingers. And I found myself on the bench, and I only played, I think it was about 11 games that season. And Sam was very much of a manager that, if the team won, it was the same team, same subs for the following game, unless anything, sort of happened. He was loyal to the players, and, if you were in the team, that's amazing. If you weren't, it's quite frustrating. But the team was doing really well, so I couldn't really get in as such. And every time I played, I gave it everything and sort of did well, but effectively I was on the bench, so I found it very difficult. I was never one of them players that was able to just sit and watch and be happy with that. I hated it, to be honest. I really hated sitting on the bench or being in the stand, or if injured and watching the team. I really didn't like it, because I wanted to be playing. I wanted to be in that situation, get the ball and take players on, and I really didn't like not playing. So I did everything possible to keep myself fit and do extra running and extra this, and it came to the start of the following season, and we were in the Europa League qualifying stages because we'd done well the previous year, and the lot of the players that had played most of the games were still off, so Slaven Bilic had just taken over as manager. And so the ones that hadn't played and a few of the younger lot we went and played in the Europa League in the qualifying stages. So I came in and was, ready to roll. I worked hard all through the summer. I was fit and raring to go, and I played well in the Europa League qualifying stages. had a really good meeting with Slaven Bilic, who I really enjoyed his training sessions. I thought he was really, really good as a manager. And he was, we started the season. I played in every game. I played the last 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 25. And I was like, I wasn't happy, but I was like, I suppose, Dimitri Payet was playing, Lanzini was playing. These players were sort of in my position, I suppose. Yeah. So I was like, these were very good players. And Slaven Bilic was like, look, you've played in every game, but I can't guarantee you're going to start every week. But as you can see, you've been involved in every single game. And then it was the last day of the transfer window, and Norwich got in touch, and I spoke to the manager, Alex Neil at the time, and he was like, look, we desperately want you to come, you'll play, and it was just on loan for the season, and you can go back the following year. And for me, I spoke to Slaven, and he was like, look, I want you to stay, but I can't guarantee you're going to play. So if you want to go and play games, I was like, for me, I just hate it. I couldn't do another season of sitting on the bench. I was just desperate to play football.
Frustrating, I can imagine.
Yeah, there's nothing worse that you train all week for that one thing, and then you can't do it, and it's hard. So I made the decision to go to Norwich, and it was last couple of hours of the window, and I remember I was sat at home.
Is it as
yes.
absolutely carnage?
I know what you're going to say.
Like,
yes,
as they make it look,
yeah.
like with Jim White on Sky
Definitely.
Sports News.
I was sat, like everyone else, I was sat there on my sofa watching Sky Sports News, just seeing all these things pop up, and then I get a call, and it was like, right, do you want to go to Norwich? I was like, right, yeah, okay. And he was like, right, well, you need to, they'll send faxes, you need to sign it and send it back. And I was like, right, okay. And I was like, my computer's not working. I was like driving around. I got in the car, started driving. I was like, where am I driving? I don't even know where I'm going. I ended up having to go to my next door neighbour, and she, an American lady, and she was like, yeah, use the computer. And I was like, right, do you know how to, like, I need to print this off and do it. She was, I'm not sure. And I was like, oh, this is quite important. I need to get it done. Like, I've got 30 minutes, and it's in the end, I was sat around hers. I was trying to print off all this stuff. I was signing it, trying to scan it all back in and send it. And I managed to do it with about 15 minutes to spare. And then you get the extra 2 hours afterwards to then finish it. So I literally sat around hers for about 3 hours, like going through all this paperwork and scanning it all back. And then my wife came back. I think she was working. She come back, and I was like, right, I've got to drive up to Norwich now. Yeah. And that was it. I left at about 10 o'clock. I got there about midnight, just gone midnight. And then that was it. I was playing in my first game a couple of days later. Yeah.
Did you get a medical, like, in the middle of the night?
Well, that
also,
no,
what did the missus think when you were around the next door neighbours? She comes in from work. Where's Matt?
Yeah. Luckily, they were good friends, so it was all right. No, it was because I was on loan and because I'd already played. It was fine with regards to the medical, but it was all get the paperwork done, and then I literally drove up. I got there about 12:30 at night, and in the hotel, trained the next day, played the following day or something like that. It was, and I scored on my debut, which was just. You can there it is. There. You see the photo.
The shirt,
it's the shirt, and that's the photo. You can just see the emotion, just because. It was sort of like having to prove yourself again, because obviously I didn't play as much the year before. You don't have that doubt, I suppose, but then you go to a new club and you have the expectation. You want to prove everyone that you can do it, and you're playing, and
like you said, mate. People straight away, he's a waste of money.
Yeah. So for me, I was desperate to do well, and I was incredible as far as being ready for a season, because I had the pre-season and played the early games in Europa League. I was the fittest I've probably been, so I was in really good shape. I was ready to go, and obviously scoring on my debut was nothing better than that. Yeah. So that got obviously everyone on side right from the go, and then I scored in my second game in the cup against West Brom, and it was just an amazing feeling to go somewhere new and start so well and just think, yes, here we go.
Here we go, yeah.
And I played, I think, about 10 games or something, and then I decided that I'm not really known for my tackling. I didn't really do it that often. I decided to block tackle Yaya Toure, and he broke me, and the ball bounced out, and I went in for a tackle with Sanya, and then I was like, oh, what am I doing? So I done my knee, I done my medial. And that's sort of, unfortunately for me, that's where it all started to go a bit wrong. I had done my medial, I had the scans. Yes, you had grade 2 MCL. I was out for about 8-9 weeks. Got back, played the rest of the season, but my knee was never right. I'd had so many injections during the season to sort of just get on with it, and it never felt right. And then I'd had PRP and all sorts of different steroid injections through the year, and then in the summer, and then I come back pre-season. I'd worked had loads of injections, but I'd worked so hard in the summer, ready to go, and then a lot of it was sort of straight line to just make sure that the injections were working. And then I come back pre-season, and after about a few 3 or 4 days, I was like, I literally can't kick the ball with my right foot anymore. It was so sore. So I made the decision to stop and to, you know, basically go in and have an operation and see what was the problem. And went in, and I woke up, and they were like, oh yeah, your medial wasn't attached properly.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, there we go. And then obviously I did the rehab to come back from that, and which again, we talk about injuries, and you talk about the whole side of things of not being able to play. In the gym, most training grounds are looking out over the pitches, and you can see all your teammates.
Do you know what I mean?
But you look out over the everyone else training. You're in the gym. Maybe I was on crutches and in a brace, and you can't do anything, and you're like, it's demoralising, and you start again. Like I don't know if you've had many operations or anything, but you lose.
I've been quite lucky, touch wood.
You lose all your muscle. So I had like this little granny leg. Really, you got you start from the beginning. It takes ages to build everything up, and you're working solidly in the gym, and you get to a position that you then get to the next stage where you can maybe get on the bike, and then you can get to the running outside, then you can do this, and it builds up. But every day is the same, and it's sometimes it's a bit monotonous. You keep going in, you have to do the same thing, but eventually you get to a point that you can then go outside, and it's like, whoa, yes. Yeah. But I got myself back fit and was ready to go, and then my first training session back with the team, I got the ball cut inside, and I shot, and one of the players came out and blocked me, and I rattled my ankle, and I was like, oh, that hurt, but it was my first training session. I was like, nah, it'll be fine. I carry on. Finished the session.
You knew though straight away, didn't you?
Yeah, I was like, oh my, that's really sore. So I was like stuck in the ice. So I had to go for a scan, and they were like, oh, it's just a bit of inflammation in the back. So I got through to the international break, had a jab, didn't train for a couple of days, and then back in, and I basically went through that the whole season, because at the time Norwich were doing quite well as well. So I was sort of like trying to get back fit to get it back in the team, but each injection and it just basically with my ankle I could sprint and I could run, but I couldn't stop, because the back of my ankle, every time you stopped, it was like bone on bone hitting against each other. And I had all these injections, and then at the end of the season, I was like, look, I'm in bits here. I can't. So I had more injections again through the summer. Come back pre-season and was like, I literally couldn't stop. Like I could run, but every time I stopped, it was agony. It was like someone like putting a dagger in the back of your ankle all the time. And I went in for just a scope really to see what the problem was. And on the scan, I know you can't see it, but if you can see this. On the scan, it shows that the cartilage is there, but then when they touched it, it all fell off. So like on the scan, it looks like the cartilage is there, but when I moved the foot, it all fell off. So I had a hole in the back of my, I think it's the top of my talus, and the bottom of my fib, I think it is, where I had no cartilage, about 2 centimeters, like holes where it was just bone on bone. So obviously it was never going to heal with injections, so I had to have what's called a microfracture, where they drill holes in the bone, both areas, to let it bleed and set, and that's my cartilage. Like that's my fibrous tissue, as they say. And going from one,
that sounds horrendous, by the way.
Yeah, honestly, it is horrendous. And going from being injured after the flying start I had, to then getting injured, to then coming back and not being 100%, to then having an operation, to then not get myself back to playing, to then having another operation, and it's really hard. And I went through that with my ankle, where basically I literally couldn't walk without being in pain, and I was like that for about months, really. And in that point, my wife, we just had a son. So I was sort of, not moving particularly well. I was up in Norfolk 6 days a week at least. She was up and back, and we sort of made the decision for her to sort of stay majority down south so that she's got a bit more help and I could concentrate on rehab. And that's why I say about, I gave it everything, because I dedicated myself to rehab and get myself back playing football, because it's what, it's ultimately what I love to do. But obviously it was also a job and the whole package, and I wanted to play football. So I dedicated my, sort of leaving my, I suppose, family to go and do it. And I sort of was getting back from my ankle, which took ages, and I basically kept on going down to see the specialist, and they would do a scan and see whether my fibrous tissue was any good. And they basically, in the end, were like, look, it's the best it's going to be. So, you can either retire or, maybe sort of try and, this is going to be it, sort of thing. So in the end, because of all my operations, I developed what's called IT band friction syndrome on my right, and because all of my operations were on my right side, because you lose muscle, you build it up, you lose it, you build it up again. I picked that up, and it's like having a dagger in the side of your knee every time you run. And they were like, right, well, let's just deal with that straight away. So I went and had another operation and peeled all that out after injection after injection. So I finally sort of got myself back fit, and it was a horrendous journey to be on. I talk about this open with yourself, that I tell my wife, really, because she was the only one that sort of saw me like that. But I literally would go in training in the morning, do all my stuff. I'd go home, sit on the sofa on my own, and then do exactly the same the next day. And I was in that much pain all the time that I would sit at home, have a little cry to myself, and away we go. Just sort of get on with it, because ultimately it was my own decision. I wanted to carry on playing. I wanted to do this. I got offered I got offered a pay up, a year's money at Norwich, and I turned it down because I didn't want it. I wanted to play, and I wanted the sacrifice that I'd made to be worthwhile, really, as well. And my wife was always like, you need to think about the future, because you're going to want to play in the garden with my son Leo. You're going to I couldn't walk at the time. I couldn't walk downhill. How was I going to run around and have a life after football? But I was so focused on just wanting to play football and getting back that was my dream, that was my light, and that's what I wanted to do. So after many horrendous days, and obviously with social media and obviously being, I suppose, in that limelight, that they just sort of put up, oh, he's injured or had a setback, and everyone's
straight away, like I said, mate, footy fans are like that. Oh, he's injured again. Yeah, football on loads of dough, mate. Don't want to play, and it's like, just couldn't be further from the truth. Exactly,
but unfortunately, no one knows until you tell them. And I was like, if anyone wants to come and have a day, come and see what I'll do, what I do in the gym all day, and that side of things, and that mental side of things, and being away from everything that you could possibly want. All I wanted to do was play football, and I couldn't do it. So finally, it took me nearly, it was 2.5 years, maybe longer, to get myself back fit, and eventually I did. And it was at a point that it was near Christmas time. Norwich were flying at the top of the Championship. I spoke to the manager, Daniel Farker at the time, who I would have loved to have played for. I feel like, and he said, I feel like you would be perfect for the way that he plays, the system. I would have been perfect. And he was like, look, we're top of the league. I can't really get you in the team because we're doing really well. And I was like, that's absolutely, I completely understand. And then an opportunity came up for me to just go on loan to Walsall. And Russell Martin, who was at Norwich with me, he was there at the time as well. And I spoke to the manager, and he was like, look, as a manager, I don't want you to go, because I think you're perfect for the change room, the environment, and for you to have someone like you to come on if we need to. But as a person, I think you need to go. I think you need to go and get back to what you love doing, and get back to playing games. And for me, I was like, absolutely, I need to go and play. And I think that was Christmas Eve, and I was like, right, well, you don't want me in Christmas Day, do you? So I had my first Christmas off.
Every cloud.
But then, I went on loan to Walsall, and I just remember my first game, just little things that make everything a bit more satisfying to getting back. I remember walking out. You come out the tunnel. We played Bolton in the cup. It was a cup game away, and just that feeling of being in the change room, putting your boots on, your shin pads on, and going out and walking out that tunnel and lining up, and then shaking hands and being like, this is what I've missed. I absolutely love it. It gives me tingles now. I absolutely love it. And then after about 10 minutes, I got my first assist, and I was just so excited, so happy, and just, you say, like, everything is worth it. And that's, for me, that was just so pleasing and exhilarating for me to know that I've gone through that horrendous, it's the hardest period of my whole life, to get through that. And now, your perspective of things change, I think, a little bit. And I feel like I've gone through the hardest times, my pain threshold, being away from family, that whole scenario, just to get back and play. And I had 2 assists in the game, and we lost. But for me, it was just amazing to be back and play, and to be pain free, and to do that. And I spent, I think, about 10, 11 games there at Walsall, and absolutely loved it. Just to get back and play football, there's nothing like it. That exhilaration, playing, taking players on, and it's just incredible.
No, I know what you mean. Like, no, they're not even the same. But I know what you mean. Like, I skinned who became my best mate now, and I still bring it up, and he's getting married next year, and I'm going to bring that up in this speech. So yeah, no, I can imagine, mate. You touched on it then. The hardest point, not just in your career, but in your life.
Yeah.
What did it teach you? Did it teach you sort of that appreciation of what you had, and then you lost it and you got it back again? What was the biggest lesson it sort of taught you looking back?
I think there's many things. My wife, I'm very much, I probably would have not really said anything to anyone. I think she made me open up and talk, and it sort of makes it a bit more real, I think. I just sort of, as I said, used to just sit there on my own up in Norwich, and be sat there, in pain, and just sit on your own. And it's hard to say, were you depressed? I don't think I was necessarily depressed, but I was down for sure. But I was, I don't know if fortunate is the right word, but there was a couple of other players that were on long-term injuries at the time. Louis Thompson, who was there at the time, he'd snapped his Achilles twice while I was there, and so he was on the rehab trail the same as me. So, and Carlton Morris was also done his ACL, and we were all sort of injured together. And I think that makes it slightly easier, because you all know what you're
shared
trying
hardship.
to get. Yeah, and some days you would be like, oh, I can't do this today. And they would be like, no, come on, we're on the bike. You're on the bike with the oxygen mask on, and you're just, it's horrendous altitude training. You're like, I don't want to do this today, and they would pull you through. And other days they would be doing the same, and you go, no, come on, let's do it. And it will just get you through them hard training sessions and bits where you're down. Maybe you've gone out and you're doing a running session, you're buzzing, and then you felt something. You're like, I come in, and you're gutted, you're lower than anything, and they would just be there, and they go, like, I know we're here, we've done it. That it makes it sort of slightly better for you. But that period of time was extremely difficult, and I think it taught me loads in myself, that I could get through anything really. Opening up and telling your deepest, darkest secrets to someone is tough. I remember.
Appreciate it, by the way. You've only just met me.
Yeah, no, I know. But
and it takes
what
a lot
it's
of
all about.
bravery,
It
mate.
does.
People look at me and soldiers, brave. I'd say I find it harder to open up to people than other stuff that.
The thing is, it's something you've trained for.
Yeah.
So mentally, you know what you're doing. You're ready for it. In some sense, I imagine.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever done that, but I imagine that's what you train for. That's what you try and get yourself ready for. But this stuff, you don't. And I specifically remember sitting on the sofa when my wife come up, and I was just like, I don't want to be in pain anymore. And that was the hardest sort of, I suppose, bit. Talking about it and being in that, and that I remember had a trip down to London with the physio, and that's when they were like, look, that's the best it's ever going to be, so you should retire, really. And he was like, have yourself a couple of days off, spend some time with your family. And I was like, oh my God. I remember we booked to go away. It was actually a place near in Norfolk, and I was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was so glazed over the whole, like, I think we were there just for the night or something. I was just like, I don't even know what to say or what to do. But it's definitely made me appreciate things a whole lot more. Definitely made me stronger in the sense that I feel like I can get through a lot more things. I appreciate my career now, looking back, and the dedication that I put into it, and to get myself back fit as well. And I think that's just sums me up, really, in the sense that I worked and worked and worked, and I wouldn't have given up. And that's I'm sort of pleased in myself that I didn't give up, because I can look back and go, I could have easily just gone, do you know what, I'll take the year's money and I'll just sit at home. But I was like, what sort of a life is that going to leave me in? I couldn't walk properly, I couldn't do anything. So I'm glad that I stuck it out and got myself back fit, and then had that exhilaration of playing again and scoring and
assisting
too,
yeah.
And having that. And I played another year and a half after that. I went to Woking and played locally, which was an amazing experience, playing in the National League, which is extremely difficult. Everyone's like, oh, the National League. No, it's extremely difficult league, and the players are fully committed, and it's really, really tough. So it was just great to have another year and a half of playing. And ultimately I was not satisfied, that's the wrong word, because I'd never come to terms with retiring, but it was just the right time. And I feel like I can look back now and be like, yeah, I've given it absolutely everything.
No, mate, you definitely have an amazing career. Something I do want to talk to you about, being on the cover of Attitude magazine. I don't know what year you did it, but certainly football, it's a lot more in the press now, but back then, like, homosexuality in football wasn't, it wasn't a thing. It's still not a thing now. Well, how did that all come about, and why did you do it?
So I think it's about 2012. I think I was at West Ham. I got asked to do it, and at the time I was like, I think Freddie Ljungberg and David Beckham were the only footballers that had done it. Yeah. And I was like, absolutely. Yeah, I was like, I didn't really think why would I not do it?
Very good company as well to be in.
Yeah, I know, that's what I thought.
Oh, obviously.
That's what I thought. Yeah. A fair few press ups were involved in before the shoot, but I
didn't eat anything all week.
No, I didn't. I don't think I ever really thought how much of a big deal it would be. I just was like, yeah, absolutely. Didn't really blink an eyelid or think why would it be any controversy. And I did it, and it all come out, and that was all I ever got asked about for about 3 years. And it was like such a taboo. It was huge. I just didn't really realise how much of a big thing this would be. And obviously now it's still, there's still so much that can be done. That's inclusion and everything, the LGBT, with everything that's it's obviously it's improving, but back then it was a massive taboo. So it got so much press, it got so much as I say, about interviews and everything, that I'd play after a game, and, oh, great result, blah blah blah. So about the Attitude magazine, and you're like, wow, I just couldn't believe how much it would make an impact, and I'm absolutely delighted that I did it.
Did anyone reach out to you afterwards, say that it sort of helped them, or
I had a few
to bring like more light to the subject?
Yeah,
sort of
definitely. And there's Pride of Irons now. I do an ambassador role at West Ham, and I got invited down to meet them and do an interview with them with Sky and everything. And it's a fantastic what like a group, I suppose, that they're doing at West Ham to have the inclusion to come to any of the games, and it's it makes everyone, you want to be able to go and watch football and be included, and that's exactly what they're doing. And definitely I got a few messages. I even went to I went to Parliament. Someone invited me down there, and I went and met them there as well. So it's as I said, I'm really, really pleased that I was able to have the smallest little bit of impact.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. I'm still waiting for them to call me and get me on the cover. Do you know what I mean? Mate, I want to say massive thank you for sharing. Love chatting with you. I've got a couple of questions just to finish. So I've told you my best moment on a football pitch at the expense of my best mate, Connor Wolf. What was your best moment? I mean, you sort of touched on it there. Was the goal that got you against Villa?
It's difficult because your best moment is.
I know you played for 18 years.
Yeah,
I know, so I'm really putting you on the spot.
But it's not even that. I think just playing at Wembley for England, I don't think you can beat that. There's so many other things like scoring goals, important goals, but just playing for your country. I just think for me, yes, it was the one cap, but that one cap was at Wembley. It was in front of all of my family, all of my friends. There was 80-odd thousand fans. That's the pinnacle, and it's a moment I'll never, ever forget.
A very good one there, mate, playing at Wembley. Can't argue with that. And then my final question is, if you could give one piece of advice to a young Matty Jarvis, what would it be?
I think everything happens for a reason. You work hard. The best piece of advice that my dad used to, don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Just concentrate on you and things will come. You don't worry about like contracts and all of this. You work hard. If you're doing well, good things will come. And I think for me, that was the start of like the dedication, the desire to improve. I think because you're never the finished article. I definitely don't think. I was still learning when I was at Woking, still practicing, still doing things after training. That you can never be the finished article, and you can keep practicing, you can keep improving, and I think that's something that I try and instill on my kids. But you don't want to try and give them that pressure. But for me, a bit of advice is you've got to take constructive criticism. I think that's helpful. But be your own critic, and you've got to dedicate your life to something, and if you can, then you strive for the top, and if you can't reach the top, you reach the next best thing, and you keep going.
Is that? Sorry, I just wanted to say that work ethic. You obviously had that, but is it sometimes hard to instill that into your kids because you don't want to be pushy, do you?
It's a really difficult balance. I find it very, very hard because you want to instill that in them and you want them to do it themselves, but you sort of have that, I don't know, to pushy parent, to not be pushy parent. I feel like I've sort of maybe gone the other way, but the good thing with Leo at the moment is he's doing a lot of it off the back. I've not tried to push him into anything, and he now practices on his own and do that, but I still have that hard part of like, right, I'll go out and like, right, can you do this, can you do that? And he was like, no, I'll listen to my coaches. And I was like, okay, well, Leo, I was actually pretty good, you know. And he's like, oh, no.
You're just my dad.
Yeah, I know. So that's the problem. But yeah, if you can have that desire, I think that there's no one that, being able to do that for yourself, I think is the most important. And then obviously when you're getting help and learning from other people is tremendous. But if you can have that inner belief and inner desire is something that no one can take that away. I know so many players that not necessarily were the best technically, but their commitment and their desire and work ethic has given them an incredible career.
I'm a big believer, work hard. Have that humility to take that criticism as well, mate. Good points to end on, and I really appreciate you sharing, mate. That is the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed it, if you could please like, follow, and subscribe, as it really helps grow the pod. Thank you for listening, Matt. Thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Absolute
Taking the time
pleasure.
out to chat. You enjoy that?